Religion gets a lot wrong, and some of its claims are obviously so harmful. Not just Christianity, whether it's caste systems in the East or sacrifice systems in South America, or of course within the Abrahamics you have eternal hellfire and being born wicked, owing a debt you can't repay, divine genocide, endorsements of slavery, on and on and on and on. But sometimes religion gets things right. And I hesitate to even make this video because I feel like believers will just latch on and be like, see, deep down, you know we need religion. I don't. This video is actually exactly the opposite of that. This video shows that religion did not invent, but instead adopted so many of the things that are indeed beneficial about it from humanity. They just stole it. They're taking credit for something that, yes, exists within their system, but is not inherent to them. And I'm going to give you 7 examples of this today. It should be a rather short video, and I hope a very helpful video, because I know so many of us, again, my goal on the channel is to help those doubting, deconstructing, or who have deconverted. And when you leave faith, you leave the system that provided these things for you. And this is so often where it can go wrong, and people can feel lonely, and they can feel unhealthy, and they can feel like, well, man, maybe God was the answer. No, it was these things that are baked into religion that are good for us, that are beautiful, that are beneficial. But we don't need God to keep them. We just have to be aware of them and then be intentional in creating them in our own life. And so again, I want to give you 7 examples of this today to help you have a more balanced and beneficial life. So let's just dive right in. The first one is the power of ritual. Man, religions all around the world do this so well. In Christianity, it looks like going to service on a weekly basis, or your quiet time, your devotionals, your prayer time, going on a walk with the Lord, baptism, communion, Lent, so many things. In Judaism, it might be some of the daily prayers or Passover Seder. In Hinduism, you have Diwali traditions and puja offerings and temple bells. If you're Shinto, you might be looking into some purification rituals. These things give predictability to our world of chaos. That's why mankind, the special species that we are, who loves meaning and attachment and pattern recognition, we're trying to establish order. Rituals do that. I've heard it referred to as a psychological metronome, a little predictable rhythm to our inner chaos. And from the data, we know rituals are important. They reduce anxiety. They improve focus and performance. They build community. That's why you'll see it everywhere, not just within religion. If you've ever been part of a sports team, you've been a part of ritual. If you've ever been in the military, you've been a part of ritual. There are things that are ritualistic that get religious, like weddings and funerals, but there's also secular events of those things, and those are still ritualistic. Then there's inherently secular things that are ritualistic, like graduations, New Year's resolutions, journaling. And I started with this one because it's one of my favorite things, and it's one that is so easily missed, again, unless you're trying to create it. So here's some of the things that I've done post my own deconversion to help build traditions, those rituals for my family and my friends to still be able to connect and to bond. Here's just a few examples. One, I still keep up my journaling practice. It used to look a lot more religious and devotional and Bible study like, but now it's just for my own processes. Also, when I start my workday, I've got a whole little ritual set up in my office, striking the match and lighting the incense and placing it back in the burner, adjusting some of the little knickknacks just so, and just having a moment of repetition and precision and clarity before I start my day. With my family, we don't do this every night, but often we'll have a tea and reading time. Everyone has been to the tea store and been able to pick out their own special teacup that they like, whatever loose leaf flavors they want to try. Decaf, of course, for the kids, and because we typically do it at night. And then we put the kettle on, and that starts the ritual. And then everybody goes and looks for what book they're going to read. Sometimes everyone's reading by themselves, but we all do it in the same room. Sometimes my wife is reading aloud, or I'm reading aloud to the kids. As the tea gets done, I'm the one who pours it and passes it around to each person, and we just sit there, usually just 30 or 40 minutes, but it's our sweet little family time. And by the way, the cool thing about leaving religion is you can just take the parts you like. You're not bound to the one religion you were born in or that claims to be correct. There is an old Native American tradition and ritual that I read about and fell in love with, and I don't know exactly which tribe it's associated with, so I apologize for that, but it's to be quiet when it begins to rain. This is something I do mainly just with my 2 children. If we're out on a walk and it starts to rain, I grab their hands and they just know it's time to be quiet for a minute. I don't even give them instruction. We do that with other things, but I don't tell them to be grateful or take a moment to meditate or anything like that. We just are. We're just quiet. We're just together. I'm having an experience. I know they're having an experience. It might look different for them. It might change as they get older, but it's one of the sweetest things in my world, and I love it, but you have to be intentional to create it. So I will be sharing some personal examples as we go through this, but mainly I'm wanting to encourage you to find that intention for yourself. Make these things priorities. Don't stay away from them just because you left religion, and don't assume that if you're doing them, you're somehow owing something to religion or to a god or to your past, etc. No, we are humans. These are human things. You don't need a god at all to enjoy them or benefit from them. The second one is a little more big, kind of abstract, but it's just communal living. It's relationship and belonging. We could just call it community. It is definitely something that religion does so well. The problem is sometimes it does it too well, right? You get the in-group and out-group, and you get hatred of the other and all of these horrific things. But in terms of creating some unity and cohesion within a group, some belonging, religion's really good at that. So again, you have to be intentional to find that outside of religion. In Christianity, it might be the small group, one's church family, often saying they're doing life together. In Buddhism, you have the shared alms, the monastic living. In Islam, you might have Ummah or Friday prayers. In the indigenous traditions, you had clan-based living and group decision-making and group story time. Because one of the things that religion understands very well is that as humans, we are wired for connection. This is scientifically, psychologically true. It's been proven isolation increases both mental and physical decline. Community can work so well for us in terms of reinforcing identity and accountability and support. Even looking at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging is just after basic survival. It's honestly one of the reasons that religion is so powerful. We all just want to belong. It's why we even make these online communities. A lot of us are finding our belonging after leaving religion in the fact that we're all people that left religion. That doesn't make atheism a religion or a shared ideology. It just means that we are still seeking out others that can validate our experiences, normalize our thoughts, vocalize what we wish we were saying. And again, the data is so obvious here. You have a 30% risk of early death if you are a more isolated individual than one in a group. Harvard's been conducting an 80-year study that shows that good relationships are the number one predictor of health and happiness. Not money, not where you live, not what religion you belong to, just belonging in general, which again, we need not religion for, because we have book clubs and bike clubs and reading groups and knitting groups, communal gardens, online groups, recovery groups, activist circles, the chosen family we get to create with our friends. I don't miss God. I don't even miss church all that much. But I do miss potlucks. I do miss small groups. And I still get to do some of these things to some degree just with my friends and neighbors. I mean, just this 4th of July, we shared it with our neighbors for the first time instead of others. All just sitting around in the cul-de-sac, letting our kids run around together. It's just so important. And again, if you're not getting it spoon-fed to you via your religion anymore, you've got to go create it. But moving on, the third one I want to cover is maybe the most important, or at least the prettiest and most poetic to me, which is the experience of awe. And if you're religious, this is easy. The majesty of God's nature, looking around at His creation. In Islam, it is awe before Allah on the Hajj pilgrimage. I just covered Jainism not that long ago, and their reverence is in the long journey of the soul, the vast journey through karma. Again, the Native American traditions have that sacredness of the land and sky spirits. No God required. I get why it is given to God, right? You are worshiping the creator for the creation. When you don't believe in a creator, or even agnostically, you don't know if there is a creator or who it would be, it's not personal. You can still just get to have awe at the universe, at being here. So many people, because it's been told to you as a reinforcement technique to keep you in the in-group, religiously have been told that you can't get this without God, that it's so hollow and so weak and empty and meaningless. And that's just not true. If anything, the added mystery heightens my sense of awe. Wilderness backpacking has always been an important hobby of mine for about the last 10 years now. And it's been harder to do more consistently as my kids have gotten older, though now I've started doing it with my kids, which is, again, combining kind of that awe and the community and the tradition and ritual. Like with my son, when he turned 7, I still put him through, instead of like a confirmation class, it was this ritualistic, and we were building up to it. He knew that since he was 4. He would get a knife when he turned 7 after he completed this huge hike and reached the mountain peak, something we had trained together for and gone on smaller hikes with. And it was so cool and so meaningful, and memories I know we'll have forever. But again, the awe, sometimes I still solo hike, or I just go with a couple of my best friends like I'm about to next month. And every single time I'm still blown away at this world. Not to the point of pretending then that there must have been a God that made it and then stopping short with special pleading that it's him that ends the infinite regress instead of just dealing with the mystery of it all. And that's okay. Awe is a cognitive response. It is still grounded in our humanity to encountering vastness or mystery. It's totally normal, totally logical, totally secular. Also, they've done studies where they will take someone and show them something amazing or awe-inspiring versus a group that goes through something rather mundane. And without fail, all of these studies show the same thing. It increases generosity. It increases cooperation, connectedness, humility. These are good things. We need to put ourselves in positions where we can still be in awe of something. It helps us dissolve ego and expand altruism. And neuroscience actually shows that awe activates the default mode of our brain, shifting us from self-focus, again, back to kind of openness. And you don't have to go out on a hike. You can just go in your backyard, get a star chart and learn, or just look up. Go stand in front of the ocean. Go travel to a different country. Stand before ancient ruins. Read about black holes or the intricacies of DNA. Again, not to create some false apologetic of how it must have been a creator, but just to be amazed, to be interested, to find it beautiful, to find it terrifying even. I actually think that religion can steal some of the beauty of awe. I can now say, look how small I am in the vastness of the mystery of the universe, instead of look how small I am in comparison to God. A God in text who are constantly trying to remind us how small and worthless and awful and evil and undeserving we are. This is what I mean. Even where religion gets some things right, it's so tainted so often, not in everything, that we can just do better without it. If we're intentional. You have to choose to go outside and look at the stars instead of show up on Sunday and get goosebumps during worship service. The next one is connected to this, and when I was coming up with these, I wasn't sure if, is this too similar? Should I just include it in the same? But I think it has its own place. And the word I'm going to use is humility. Now, I think awe leads to humility, and specifically, I think we could even talk about humility before the cosmos or within the universe, which again could look like awe, but let me draw out some distinctions. Again, in Christianity, that humility is negative. We're dust, and to dust we return. And that's a good understanding to have about the finitude of life. But it's always just trying to keep us small, leaning not on our own understanding, and the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, things like this. Islam itself means submission, but it's a total submission to God and his desires for your life. We see a somewhat healthier version of humility in Taoism, going with the flow of the Tao. Just to switch it up, even looking at like ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, who again are God's representatives on earth, divine-like in and of themselves, still had humility rituals, going back to ritual before Ma'at, before cosmic order. But again, we can get all of that in real and more helpful and healthful, beneficial humility just by recognizing our place in the universe, which again, religion often tells us we are center stage. We are the creation that matters. We are the species that is above the others. No, we're just a part of it all. We're the result of chance and time, not design. And that's okay. When you start reading and understanding astronomy better, and you understand the two trillion galaxies out there, each with billions of their own stars. That's insane. That's getting knocked down in a good way. When everything starts to feel like it's about you and you're making everything about yourself, you're acting selfishly, you're getting put off by the smallest of inconveniences, that zooming out, or as Carl Sagan calls it, the great demotion, as we've continued to understand we're not the only planet. We're not even the only planet in this solar system. We're not even the only solar system. We're probably not the only intelligent life out there. Even on planet Earth, we're not the most important or intelligent life, except that we are to ourselves. But a self-preference doesn't mean anything. That's why religion tries to imbue it with objective meaning of our creation. But we just don't know that. You've probably all seen that pale blue dot image. Again, space, cosmos, the stars, all of it is so helpful for understanding that. But read what was written along with that photograph and see what that kind of awe and humility can do. Even if we just stay super enclosed in just our Earth, and you look at the geological time scales, and you see how minuscule, almost barely there, Homo sapiens at large have been in the entire history of just this one planet. You continue to shrink yourself down and down and down and down, not to become worthless, not to need something bigger, but just to recognize our place and receive our humility. And yeah, religion does a good job, I think, in general, of helping us feel small, but it's usually at a price, and it's usually hypocritical. On one hand, we're supposed to believe we're nothing, we're just dust, and on the other is we are the image bearer of the Creator, and that He made this for us specifically, which does the opposite of the importance of humility. True humility comes not from fearing gods or being put down by them, enslaved or subjected to them. It comes from facing reality. That's all we need. Moving on, number 5, and listen carefully because I'm not crediting morality to religion. Religion is an enforcer of morality, but it adopted morality as the skill set that humans came up with to survive and thrive. But one of the things, to get more specific, is not morality within religion, but storytelling to achieve morality. This is something I've been reading a lot about recently, and it's fascinating to me to see in every tribe and culture and religion the importance of storytelling. Some religions do it better than others. You can look at things even like Jesus's parables as moral teachings, working way better than his father Yahweh just hammering out commandments. What actually helps you to be a better person? Being commanded to do so, or hearing a moral story that you empathize with and can understand and see yourself in? I think most of us would say the latter. And again, humans know this, and so humans that made their religions continue to do this, but then religion kind of monopolized it, and so when you leave religion, especially if you're like actively trying to get away from the harm of religion, you don't want to read the Bible anymore. Well, that's fine. It's not the only place with good stories. And yeah, some of the stories in the Bible are good and have good moral lessons. Many don't. But you can say that about anything, and that's what's cool. When you leave religion, you don't have to try to adhere to the truth of it. You don't have to try to back up the validity of the statements made. You can enjoy it for what it is, a story. And by the way, some of the stories in the Bible, just to get the caveats out, were indeed intended for this purpose, and humans have tried to make them too literal and have actually lost the meaning of those stories. I recognize that, but it's just because it's so damn loaded. You can get all of the same things from Egyptian mythology or Native American storytelling or Greek mythology or Eastern Chinese or Indian parables, etc. It's everywhere. But again, if you leave religion, you need to be intentional to seek those out. It's still how I try to teach my children. I don't just scream at them to share. I tell them a story about what it's like when someone doesn't share with you, or how good it feels when you share it and you see the joy, and I help them experience it. We love stories. Stories activate our brain and our empathy. This is just hands down factual data from studies. And aside from empathy, storytelling also activates imagination and ethical reflection. So yes, being able to utilize stories effectively for cohesion and empathetic response, taking care of each other, is phenomenal, and we shouldn't lose it just because we're losing religion. 2 more. I'm not sure the best word for this. I was going to say meditation, and then I thought maybe I should be more specific and say mindfulness meditation, but maybe just contemplative practices in general. Again, religion is very good at this. Prayer itself is found in most religions, this idea of talking to God. And if you watch my podcast interview with Britt Hartley, I think one of the most interesting sections there was when we talked about prayer. This is kind of similar to that video in general. That video was 10 things that die with the death of God. And so even though I think that prayer, in terms of how it's typically thought religiously, asking or expecting that something divine will intervene in some way meaningfully here on earth, is disbeneficial and even problematic, there are side benefits to prayer, because since there is no God, you are talking to yourself. You're hearing your needs. You're hearing your desires. You're bringing an awareness to your own mind about things you should maybe then be on the lookout for or engage with. There's so many powerful things to being contemplative, to being quiet, to being introspective. Again, religion just claims that all via prayer, but you can just sit. You can actually develop a meditation practice, and I'd encourage you to, because I think it can get you a lot further, a lot faster. You could also journal, but just that stillness, especially in today's day and age, it's so hard. Do you have an hour a day that is truly screen-free? Are you being intentional to have that time, and then what you do with that time? How are you reflecting? How are you being contemplative? There are certain breathing techniques. There are certain focusing techniques. There's certain counseling that utilizes mindfulness meditation or cognitive behavioral therapy or EMDR, all of these different things that help us kind of tap into ourselves. Go for a walk, go sit still, get a mindfulness app, get a breathing app, start journaling, just write anything once a day. There are so many ways to still tap into this for yourself, and it is so important that we do. Let's move on to our last one, which is taming the ego. Lots of spiritual and secular concepts and work on this. Religiously, we can see it with denying yourself, taking up your cross. In Buddhism, we hear that the ego is an illusion, that is what causes suffering. In Jainism, it is self-denial that leads to liberation. In Taoism, it is the wise person that puts themselves last. Literally, I can't think of a mythology or religion that I know decently well that doesn't have this as kind of a main concept. Again, sadly, sometimes I think there's a lot of negative byproducts by this, like the self-esteem issues that we see tied to so many of this, or the negativity or judging of others that can happen by way of being institutionalized within religion to view things this way. But secularly speaking, we know that ego-driven behavior leads to narcissism, or even lesser than just poor decision-making and conflict. And so again, modern psychology has understood this, and it's built into our counseling and our therapies with CBD and ACT that help identify, what is the term? Ego-driven narratives that we're so often otherwise led by. Psychedelics therapy is also getting more and more traction now, which is incredible to see, where one of the goals is often ego death, which gives long-term results for people. We know from research and data that people who can admit their mistakes build better relationships and often go on to be more successful. We know that leaders who show vulnerability are more trusted. Deconstructing our own ego is just as important as deconstructing religion or the beliefs that we hold. And sometimes it can feel a bit cliche, right? We can hear these modern sayings of stay curious or demonizing main character syndrome, but there's something to all of that. And I think deep down, most of us know that. So here's what's actually really cool about it. Taming the ego is this ancient goal. It's something that I think man learned early on was beneficial and helpful. And as we created religion to evolve alongside with us, to help us navigate some of the existential fears and dreads, find meaning and purpose and morality and things like this, we adapted that understanding of the need to tame the ego into the religious practices themselves, which again often had very negative outcomes or byproducts. But now we still have that same need to tame the ego, but we have such better tools. No thanks to religion, despite religion. So now we have better tools and better reasons to do it. And we know that we don't need religion to do it. This is all good news. Religion didn't invent these practices, these truths, these understandings or concepts. They just belong to humanity at large. They're part of our story. So keep that wisdom, keep that knowledge, keep these practices, and let go of the baggage that religion forced us to have with it all along. And I'll see you Sunday with a new episode. Until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn, my Humanist heroes, Craig, James, Jarrod, Kristi, and Matthew, my Atheist advocates, Aquitar, Caleb, Dan, David, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Julie, Malcom, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. If you believe in the mission of this channel, please consider joining these fine people.